we need to talk about NFTs. The way I see it, there are two kinds of people. People who already know what an NFT is and wish it would go away forever. Or the people that don't have any idea what's going on and they don't understand why people are either mad about it or spending their life savings on it. There's also technically a third kind of person who thinks an NFT is a good thing, but they spend their life savings on a JPEG of an ugly monkey, so I don't really count them as people. So that we can continue with this video, I'm going to give a brief explanation of what an NFT is for people in camp number 2, much to the chagrin of people in camp number 1. NFT stands for non-fungible token, and I hate that that's inserted fungible into my vocabulary because every time I hear it I think it's something to do with mushrooms. What it means is it's a thing that you can't replicate, clone, duplicate, copy, and it's about that simple. People like to overcomplicate their explanation of NFTs, and I think it's because they're reasonably good people who are trying to find the nugget of wisdom at the heart of what it sounds like a very complicated and bad idea. Because, as very reasonable people, they can't possibly believe that this thing is just stupid from the beginning. Spoilers, viewer. It's just stupid from the beginning. This is a book. I know I'm getting technical, but do try and keep up. On the back of this book, you will see, if it'll focus, something called an ISBN, or an International Standard Book Number. Now what that does is it means that this book, this title, this book here, anywhere in the world that you might need to find it, so Amazon, a bookshop, a library, that number relates to this book, and that number there is basically an NFT. It is a reference that points to a thing. It is not the thing itself. It's stored on the blockchain, which is another word that I'm absolutely sick of hearing, which is kind of like an online, very secure database, except every time you want to add some information to that database, you have to burn down a tree and slap £250 onto the cost of a new graphics card. Because it is a reference and not the actual thing itself, you can have an NFT for literally anything that exists on the internet. Videos, music, or those ugly MS Paint pictures of monkeys that people spend $20,000 on because for some reason we've reinvented forum avatars, except the only people who are buying them are people who watch Wolf of Wall Street and decided to base their personality on it. You might notice that I keep reiterating that it's a reference and not the actual item. That's because it's an important point that you need to remember when we move forward. Let's go back to the book and its ISBN. If you were to purchase this as an NFT, you would be buying this number down here. That is what you would purchase. You would get a digital receipt that says you have purchased the ISBN for this book. Now, even if you've never heard of NFTs before this video, you can probably see the problem with that. Owning this number doesn't give you any ownership over this book. That number might be irreplaceable and unique, but you can print as many copies of this book as you want. Your ownership of that number has nothing to do with the functionality of this book as an item, and that is one of the big problems with NFTs. They are functionally meaningless. I'm trying not to talk about the environmental aspect of what an NFT does, because I worry that one day they're going to kind of fix that, and then all the tech bros will be like, actually, NFTs are actually good now, actually, we're no longer burning down the rainforest. But they still won't be good. They will always still be awful. So to recap, an NFT is a unique digital record that relates to a thing, but is not the thing itself. I told you people overcomplicate it. Now you know what they are. Let's talk about why they're stupid, and why I got so angry I felt the need to make a whole ass video about them. A few days ago, a guy named Nicholas Puard said, "Gamers don't get what a digital secondary market can bring to them. It's really beneficial, but they don't get it for now." Nicholas Puard, in case it wasn't glaringly obvious, is a vice president of some description, and his actual job role is head of blockchain initiatives. Now, I'm not saying that maybe as a result of that he has some biased horse in this long and tedious race, and that his job performance depends entirely on millions of people suddenly deciding wholesale that NFTs are a good idea, but actually that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, that's the point, yeah. He works for Ubisoft, by the way, and Ubisoft themselves are a founding member of something called the Blockchain Gaming Alliance. In fact, Nicholas Puard is a founding board member of the BGA, and the BGA has a blog post that I think you should read if you're interested, titled "Play to Earn Blockchain Games as Next Step for Games Industry." In that article, they talk about how NFTs are going to be another pillar for people to have real ownership of their games, because right now all the digital items they buy go away if the game goes down forever. Which is a shame for, and I am not making this up, players of Evolve, Orcs Must Die Unchained, Blacklight Retribution, Marvel Heroes, Paragon, and the mighty quest for epic loot. Oh no, how sad for them. Anyway, seeing Mr. Puard accuse us all of not getting it, I felt the need to have to say something. It may not mean anything, it may not do anything, it may not help. But I do worry that this suited sack of speculative sputum are going to capitalise on the fact that some people have a very short memory for what the games industry has tried to force us to get over the years. Because I think when I go through it, you'll start to notice a pattern, and I think it's a pattern that Ubisoft, and indeed all the major game publishers, could probably do with paying attention to, and so could you. Do you remember 2012? According to the Mayans, the world was going to end and we're all very sad that it didn't. It was also the year that Capcom were found to be selling physical copies of Street Fighter Cross Tekken with unreleased, fully functional future DLC characters literally on the disc itself. Some of you won't remember this because you were like 4 years old and you were watching Dora the Explorer. But this is one of many terribly consumer-unfriendly practices that companies have tried to shift onto us over the years. Free-to-play is another good example. We went through the entire rise, dominance and fall of the mobile games industry, where for a while everything was Angry Birds or Fruit Ninja, and then Candy Crush turned up, and it rinsed your mom of all the money that she'd made selling pillowcases to her friends on Facebook. Then there was something like Always On DRM, which was a thing that certain companies tried to push for a while. And of course, when I say certain companies, obviously I mean Ubisoft. There's many examples, but we'll pick Driver San Francisco, which launched with anti-piracy measures that wouldn't let you play this exclusively single-player game unless you were connected to the internet. They later rolled that back because a bunch of people told them how stupid it was. I suppose that was another thing that we just didn't get. But what about the announcement of the Xbox One, where Microsoft tried to sell us the same idea for an entire console, which they then walked back because everybody told them it was stupid, including Sony.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
Did we not get it then either? There are so many examples of innovative new technologies and paradigm-shifting practices that we've all been forced to get. Things like season passes where you pay upfront for content that doesn't exist yet for a game you already paid full price for, or the confusing litany of day one digital collector's editions, so you don't even know how much it's going to cost to just get a full game on the day it comes out. That one's another Ubisoft specialty, by the way. Remember when I said you'd start to see a pattern? Companion apps on your smart devices, in-game purchasable materials in full-price single-player games, paid cosmetics or even cheats that 20 years ago would have been unlockable through gameplay, early access for games that are never finished, crowdfunding for games that are never even released at all, or most recently, games as a live service. These are all things that were going to change the way that we interact with our games as products. Some of them stayed, some of them didn't. But they were all designed with the express purpose of taking as much money from you as they could first, with the quality of the game a very distant second. And believe me, Mr. Puard, we get all those. We didn't have a choice, because you did them anyway. So please, try not to be surprised when you announce the newest exciting way to take more money from us as quickly as possible, and get told in no uncertain terms to shove it up your backside. We get it more than you probably understand, because it's been happening for a long time. And what we also get is that if there wasn't a loud, consistent and audible backlash, you would do this stuff on a weekly basis. I'll give you an example. Team 17, the makers of Worms, recently announced that they were getting into NFTs. Worms actually makes sense to me because they're little cute cartoony things with personalities and a neat identifiable aesthetic that you really might want to collect and own one of, so I understand why of all the possible things that could fit into the NFT space, this would be one of them. Team 17 were then told through Twitter that nobody wanted this, that they should roll it back, stop it now and just forget the whole thing. And they were told so strongly, vocally and consistently that they did. They did stop. They cancelled it a day later and we're all very happy that they did, because I think I speak for a lot of people when I tell you I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of loading up the internet in a morning to try and find some interesting gaming coverage and seeing a new news article about a new and exciting way that some marketing executive somewhere is going to try and raid my wallet again. And I'm mostly sick of it because it never has anything to do with game design. This channel is, of course, called Let's Talk Game Design. So, let's talk game design. Because the truth is, I could probably forgive a lot of what NFTs do if they demonstrated some meaningful, useful, novel, interesting way to interact with our games in a way we haven't before. But they don't. Because the biggest positives of NFTs in video games are one of three things. They either don't work, you don't want them, or we can do them already. Let me explain. I'm just going to circle back a bit to that article I mentioned earlier from the Blockchain Gaming Alliance, where they said, developers can tokenize each digital asset on the blockchain, which means that everybody is capable of tracking the available amount, its rarity and ownership history. Based on its usability, it will most definitely have a certain value that will decrease or increase over time. For example, developers can tokenize a sword from an action game, or an awesome car from a racing game, and players can store these ownership contracts in their player-owned wallets. In addition, players are free to sell their items or give them away to a friend. On top of that, users can transfer digital ownership freely, but there's always just one person with true ownership over a certain item. I probably don't need to tell you what's wrong with this, but I'm going to anyway. Let's take their example. An awesome car in a video game, something like Forza. Now, Forza has lots of awesome cars in it. You can, if you want, earn pretty much any of them just by playing the game. Although there's a lot of freemium nonsense going on because it's 2022, so of course there is. By and large though, you can get to the upper tiers of the game through your own gameplay initiatives and maybe buy the freemium cars if you want. Fine. Remember when I said that an NFT is basically a reference number to a thing that exists somewhere else, right? So let's say that you buy an NFT for a car, and that unique number references a car. Now for them to be unique, or to have any value at all other than what we normally do now, there'd have to be a limited number, right? Because each entry has to be unique and it costs money to list things on the blockchain, which means that there is now a finite number of that car ever made, ever available, anywhere. A digital car that you could just right click on, click copy and click paste somewhere else is now digitally limited. So now if you want that car and they've sold all the NFTs, you're going to have to go find someone who has it and buy it off them, which means you as a player now have less access to all of the cars in the game than you've ever had before because of digital scarcity, which is a stupid, consumer unfriendly idea. So that's why you wouldn't want it. But did you know we can already do this? This whole secondary market thing, where you have ownership and sell the stuff you have. Because this has been happening for years. This is not going to come as a surprise to anyone who's ever played Team Fortress 2. In Team Fortress 2, you get hats. You also get weapons, crates, keys, stuff, basically. Some of those items are in fact limited by when they were released, how old they are, what version of the game they were released into. They really are digitally scarce, but not on purpose, just because Team Fortress 2 and the games that tied into it have been around for a long, long time. You can sell those things on Steam to other people, now, today, if you want. This entire system already exists, has existed for years, and works in a way that's not limiting to people who are trying to play a video game. It is literally already there. Remember how I said you'd start to notice a pattern? Well, this is something that, like I said, you can do right now, today. Hold on to that thought. Okay, well what about... Let's say they don't go down this route. Let's say that whatever company this is will always front the cost of listing your item on the blockchain, so they can produce as many of this thing as they want, right? That might on the surface sound like a noble pursuit. After all, it'd mean that you'd still own something if a game ever went the way of, I don't know, Mighty Quest for epic loot. So let's say that Forza, for some reason, goes away forever. It won't, but let's just assume. What you now own, like we've said before, is a reference number. And now that reference number points to absolutely nothing. The thing it refers to no longer exists, so the thing you own is functionally worthless. Congratulations. You've basically bought a certificate saying that you own a plot of land on Mars, for all the real world value that it has. The article talks about how these games don't last forever, and then all the money you've plunged into it just goes away. But what you have to understand is if nobody makes a game that uses the NFT you bought, if nobody decides to point your NFT reference number to a new thing, that's still the same problem. That's still going to happen, and even if it doesn't, how do you know it's going to point to a thing you'd want? So let's say Microsoft makes a new, different game. Let's say Halo. And in this new Halo, let's say they take your Forza tokens and make them correspond now to guns or armor instead. Isn't that good? Well, no. Let's say you bought an awesome, amazing car in Forza, and in Halo, that corresponds to armor that is beige. Beige with a floral print on that looks like your nan's curtains. Is that an equivalent value? Or have Microsoft just arbitrarily made your purchase worthless to you because nobody likes beige? And aren't you then putting a lot of faith in these companies to keep honouring the NFTs you bought, when they're already happy enough to just disregard all of your purchases and take a game down forever? Do you, for some reason, think that will change when you have a digital receipt saying you bought an entry in a database once? Because if you do, you haven't been paying attention. Then there's the question of, alright, let's say that doesn't happen either, and instead your awesome Forza car now also relates to an overpowered shotgun that can kill everybody else in one hit. That's awesome, right? Well, maybe for you. It's not good for the game though, is it? Imagine a world where everybody's gradually accumulating tokens, values and items that have to relate to something meaningful in the in-game world, or else nobody would buy them. What this means is that over the course of time and money spent, some people are going to accrue an obscene amount of unbalanced items in every game they take their NFTs into. Does that sound like fun to you? Even with this awesome car, if it stays being an awesome car, then when you get into the next Forza game, you're getting matched up with someone who has an awesome car they bought 3 years ago that's better than anything you can get your hands on without paying obscene amounts of money. That's not good for game design. It's really, really bad. But what if they were to only make it cosmetic? Well, what would be the point then? You're carrying cosmetics with you in between games, and if they're different games, you've got no idea what your NFT from that dead game is going to end up being when you get there. But if they carry over to the sequel in the same series, and they're cosmetic only, isn't that okay? Well, yes, actually, that would be fine. But we can do that already. That already exists. In fact, Forza has let you do this for years, so clearly you don't need NFTs for that. So if it's not for gameplay items that would ruin balance, and it's not for cosmetics that you can just import over yourself, then what exactly is the point? Well, another argument for this, and in fact the title of the blog post I was talking about earlier, is the idea of play to earn should make your skin crawl as soon as you hear it. It does for me. It's this idea that the time that you put into a video game should have a monetary value that you would then later recoup through this secondary market that they're all on about. First, I'm going to deal with the philosophical aspect of this, which is, frankly, sickening. I don't know about you, but I don't play games to make money. To me, the value of a game is in the enjoyment that I get from playing that video game. I have never once sat down to a video game and thought, right, well, time to grind this out for 12 hours so that I can get 20 quid's worth of digital guff. It sounds horrifying and dystopian, and not in a fun way. I mean, it also sounds like something we can already do. Listen, I have a confession to make. In my past, I did something quite terrible. I hoped it had never come to this, and I hope it doesn't make any of you see me any differently, but I need to get this off my chest. It was a long time ago, and although I'm not trying to justify my actions, I am a different person now. I once bought some gold in World of Warcraft. It was a moment of weakness. There was something I really wanted. I can't even remember what it was now, and I bought some gold, I think on eBay, from some dude in World of Warcraft. I'm so sorry to have let you down like this. Please like and subscribe for my apology, because I understand that's how YouTube works. There's always been a secondary market for stuff in a video game that has value. Go to eBay right now and type in Fortnite skin and you'll find hundreds of listings for accounts with rare skins on. Those people aren't meant to be selling those, but they can if they want, and it's not going to stop them. So now you might be thinking, okay Zane, but that's against the terms of service. Isn't there a way that we can then legitimise this so that it's a good thing? Well, no. But also yes, because we already do. I already mentioned Team Fortress 2, but have you ever heard of the MMO EVE Online? It's the one where you get a blog post every few months of some mad diplomatic treachery that real people have carried out against each other, and it's a fascinating game. I don't recommend playing it, but you should definitely read up about what people do to each other, because that's really entertaining. EVE Online has a monthly subscription cost of £11.99. That is the monetary value of 1 month's subscription to this game, as you might find in something like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV. This is all quite standard. What's not standard, and is in fact more novel, is that you can pay for this if you want with in-game currency that you earn from playing the game. Now, it costs about 2.2 billion in-game currency per month, but if you work your way up to being able to raise that comfortably, you can effectively play for free with your own skill. You are gaining an £11.99 value per month by playing the game. You are literally already playing to earn. Like I said, NFTs are either things that don't work, that you don't want, or that we do already. It's a pattern. Pay attention. Speaking of things that don't work, another idea that's bandied about a lot when we talk about NFTs in games is, if you're unfortunate enough to have come across those NFT morons on Twitter, you might notice that occasionally one of them will say something like, what if you could have your own character that you own and use it in all the games you play? What if? What a brilliant idea. Thank you so much for coming up with that. Let me explain to you why it's stupid. I don't actually need to tell you why it's stupid. I know for a fact that most of my audience are into game development in some fashion, and you know why it's stupid already. None of you need me to tell you how unfeasible it is to create assets for every NFT that might ever exist to refer to a player character in any format at all, ever, so that some moron can bring his epic tribal tattooed Joe Rogan ripoff into your 2D Metroidvania. Quick summary though, for those of you that maybe don't know. Like I said, an NFT is a reference to a thing that exists somewhere else. It's not the thing itself. You can't just pull this massive library of assets that are created for NFTs and then immediately use them in your video game. What that means is that game developers would have to devote time, energy and money to creating every possible asset, all the animations and everything that goes along with creating these NFT characters so that they fit into their game if that player has that NFT. The sheer amount of work that would take is in no way worth it at all. Because if you think about it, what's the developer going to get out of it? This is also that people can bring their NFT characters from things they bought already into this new game. Which means they already bought the NFT, which means they're not giving extra money to the developer. And I don't know about you, but I can't think of any major developers that wouldn't do something if they weren't in some way going to profit from it. In fact, that's kind of the crux of this whole argument. What incentive do they have to make assets for something that they didn't sell so that you can use it in their game? They don't, do they? And that's just coming at it from a monetary point of view, because sometimes talking about money is the only thing that these morons understand. I'm more annoyed at it from a game design perspective because I'm an egomaniac. I don't want your thing that you own in my game. Any game that I have designed will have a specific aesthetic and graphical quality and a unifying kind of look and feel to it. What I'm saying is I don't want your hyper-realistic soldier shooter bro messing up my colourful cel-shaded Katamari ripoff, for example. But if you want to do that, mod it in later, when I'm not paying attention. Side note, if you are looking to play as any character in any game, look into mods. They're free, they're available now, we've been doing it for years. Even a game that has an extensive character creation system will have some unifying art style that will bring that character as best they can, depending on the monster you've made, into the game world. So again, it doesn't work. I think there are many more reasons why NFTs don't work for video games, especially for video game design, but I think if I carry on I'm going to get so angry I give myself an aneurysm, so I should probably wrap it up now. The takeaway is this. NFTs don't provide us with the capacity to do anything that we wouldn't want to do and can't do already. Whatever avenues they open up are only going to be bad for you. I hope that you see this for what it actually is. The new wave of gimmicky bullshit monetization because you've committed the crime of wanting to enjoy a video game. How dare you? To all of you I would say this. Be very, very careful around anyone who tries to tell you that NFTs are a positive step forward for the games industry. Or at all, really. We are all of us, and I'm no exception, susceptible to being grifted. You've seen it everywhere, especially in the game development space, especially in the YouTube game development space. You know who I mean. And you need to learn to identify these people. Speaking of grifters, by the way, my game is out on Steam and you should go and buy it. It's got no NFTs in it, thanks. And if by some miracle you're from a large publisher or game developer and you've somehow stumbled onto this video, let me spell this out for you very clearly. It's not that we don't get NFTs. It's that we neither want nor need NFTs. And if I'm being entirely honest, neither do you. Because the truth is, and this is something that people like Nicholas Puard don't understand because they're vice president corporate executive people in suits. It's not hard to make money from people who play video games. You just give them a good video game. You value their time. You make it clear and transparent what it is you're making and why they might like it, and they will queue up to give you money. Put your focus primarily on designing and completing a good video game, and stop trying to focus on new and even more tedious ways of making money from people before they've even bought the game in the first place. You just have to make a good video game. But then, Nicholas Puard works for Ubisoft, so I suppose that's just something he wouldn't get. That was supposed to be a mic drop and it was really cringe. If you've watched this, then thank you, and I'm sorry that it went on for forever. I just had a lot to get out because it was all doing my head in. And I figured it was at least game design adjacent, so I could put out a video of it on the main channel, maybe reach some of you lot, because I kind of want to clear this up for people I care about. And I care about you lot. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you want more of it, don't if you don't. And I'll see you the next time that some skeevy corporate executive takes time out of his busy schedule of making life miserable for the people that work for him, and decides there's a new bullshit way of monetizing us all.